Okay, I'm gonna be quick with the intro here because I sound awful. So, if you're wondering why I sound awful, it's because I've been recovering from a cold, because go figure, it's spring season, and that means all the diseases are coming out of the woodworks, both figuratively and sometimes literally, to infect you. So that's why I sound awful. Anyways, today's topic is mostly about something that's happened rather recently, although this is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while now. And that's the slow and painful decline of actual kids-safe places. And with the recent news of certain states, namely California, because of course it's California, why would it not be California, increasing their surveillance and even making it so you have to have age verification on the OS level, and this includes something like Linux, which, yeah, good luck trying to enforce that. It is becoming increasingly apparent that, by all accounts, kids don't have anywhere safe to go anymore, especially with places like Twitter and Discord being places that they should not be, period. Granted, Discord also shot itself in the foot by basically forcing age verification, which, yeah, that went over so well last time, and oh, what's that? There's a data breach? Oh, who could have guessed? It's kind of ironic because on another video I was going to make was Discord sucks actually, and you should instead use Matrix instead. Oh boy, I wish I made that sooner, but you know, sometimes life gets the better of you. But something I don't see a lot of people talking about is that it's not the children invading these spaces that's a problem, it's the fact that these children are demanding that these spaces be accommodating to them and not the other way around, which kind of pisses me off to a certain degree, because back in the day, the internet was a very different place. I am what you would call a zillennial, the awkward middle child of Gen Z that doesn't get all the attention because, well, we're not as annoying as the Zoomers that most people think of. I myself grew up in the very interesting part of the internet, being able to see the early part of the internet, although not that far back in the early internet, but enough to see it grow into what it is today, so yeah, I kind of know the culture. And the culture back then was very different, because back then, there was unwritten rules. Back in the day, the old internet was like the Wild West. And like how most people think the Wild West was, they're wrong. For the most part, it was pretty tame. Was there definitely some shock value? Was there definitely some very terrible things going on? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, you had to actively go looking for that sort of thing back then. The thing is, if something like what Twitter is today would happen, basically everyone would be pointing and laughing. Because back in the day, if you were acting like your average Twitter user, you would either get banned or completely and utterly laughed at until you just left of your own accord. Because back then, we had class. Because back then, you basically had to follow the rules. And ironically enough, because those rules were set, people were generally a lot nicer. And if you were new to a community, there generally was someone there to welcome you and show you the ropes, so long as you were willing to learn. But nowadays, people are getting increasingly hostile towards tourists for a good reason, because these tourists are basically demanding that these spaces be accommodating for them. Especially when it comes to children, this is especially a problem because, like I tend to say, it tends to be a bigger problem than what you really think it is. A lot of this can be traced back to just terrible parenting and people just not wanting to parent their kids, like, at all. And again, that's like 90% of society's problems can be traced back to just parents don't want to parent, or at the very least parent well and teach their kids things like morals. Instead, they just plop them down with an iPad and say, here you go, little Timmy, you can go play your Roblox game. Oh, what's that? Roblox is full of predators? Oh, that's not my problem. That's Roblox's problem. And oh, what's that? The CEO wants to do something stupid like turning it into a dating site? What the hell? I'd say we live in a comedy sketch, but at the same time, this is not even funny. This is just absolutely creepy, which is kind of really sad when you think about it, because back in the day, if you were a kid on the internet, you basically didn't say a damn word. And if someone found out you were a kid on the internet, they also didn't say a damn word if you were respectful.
But you might say, oh, the squeakers. People made fun of the squeakers back in the day of the COD lobbies.
Yeah, because they were annoying little fucking shits who couldn't shut their mouth. And rightfully, people pointed and laughed. You know who else pointed and laughed at those kind of kids? Other fucking kids. Because go figure, they were spoiled little shits who need to be put in their place. Back in the day, the internet was not as hostile towards children in the slightest, because if you were a kid that wandered into an adult space, most of the time, they'd just kind of play it off, maybe teach you the ropes, and mostly keep to themselves and be respectful about it. Oftentimes, communities would blend into one another, and oftentimes, as long as they generally kept the degenerates at bay, then that was fine. The reason many communities oftentimes had their outliers was because they didn't gatekeep the degenerates hard enough. Most communities have their degenerates, and back in the day, it was only a couple of outliers. Like, not every furry is a degenerate, and not every MLP fan is a pony fucker. That's kind of an important distinction to make. There are good people in these communities, except nowadays it's kind of harder and harder to find them because they're more and more reclusive. Because people have been trying to force people into other spaces where they don't belong and they don't integrate. This could be turned into some kind of commentary about society as a whole, but I'm too sick to even really care right now. Because very importantly, kids had their own spaces. Back in the day, you had Club Penguin, you had Toontown, you had something like Fusion Fall for MMOs, and even then you have one that's surprisingly still kicking to this very day, Wizard 101. And various other things such as Flash games used to play. Back in the day, Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon had Flash games on their website you could play. Were they great? It really depended on which one you're talking about. But at the same time, kids had their own spaces. They generally did not invade other spaces if they did not have to, or they accidentally wandered. Sorry about that. Anyways, what I was saying is basically kids had their own spaces. And very importantly, these spaces were meant for kids. Club Penguin, by most accounts, was not catered to adults at the slightest, but that did not stop adults from invading it. Although there were safeguards in place to stop this sort of thing from really getting out of hand. This is not the same for something like Roblox, which is actually kind of a problem, because the main thing is that Roblox is pretty much the only kid-safe place that's left around that's actually still popular enough to really keep a player base. When it came to something like Club Penguin, it mostly came down to Disney's greed and getting rid of things that they probably shouldn't have because they were greedy idiots. Something like Toontown Online was very popular, and people still think of the game fondly today because of its nostalgia. It was a very fun game that had that iconic Disney style to it, and they just kinda got rid of it. Same goes for Club Penguin, which ultimately got replaced by a shitty mobile game version that nobody remembers. And as for Flash, well, Adobe killed that a long time ago, and most of the time, those games are not very well archived. Some of them are still archived well, and hopefully more of them can be found over time, but that's still guessing. So what does that leave? It leaves Roblox, and guess what happens when a bunch of kids are in one place and adults are basically allowed to wander there without any repercussions? You get the diddlers, you get the Epsteins, as it were. And not really helping is the fact that Roblox is seemingly making this worse by being, well, completely and utterly malicious. And I'm not usually one to make accusations like that, but if you're wanting to turn a platform primarily filled with children into a dating platform, well, I'm going to have to ask, what the hell are you hiding on your hard drives? Not really helping is that, once again, we have proven that we are completely and utterly stupid as a species and cannot handle the fact of the matter that certain things do not equal one another. I am of course talking about something that will probably piss a lot of people off. I'm of course talking about Lolicon. Now let me be real real here, I'm not a fucking fan of lolicon. I am much more of a hag enjoyer myself. I genuinely do not care for most series that have lolicon. But let's be real here, some people are just straight up so fucking dumb about this. It's not even funny. These are not children, these are drawings. Get over it. I don't particularly care for something like Blue Archive, but I don't care if anyone enjoys Blue Archive either. It's a fucking game with fucking drawings. Now, if those are drawings of real people and real children, that's a different story, and that's a whole other gray area that crosses way too many lines to be safe. But especially when it comes to people's stupidity, there are people calling Freerin, I'm sorry, I have a stutter. Freerin, however you pronounce her name, Freerin, the elf lady. I'm just gonna call her the elf lady since I can't pronounce her damn name because I'm sick. There are people calling her a child because she has a small petite body and she's short. Oh, I'm sorry, small petite women in real life, I guess you are children now because some idiot on Twitter said so. Which really does annoy me on top of that because Freerin is an elf, as in she's ridiculously old. She's old enough to be your grandmother 50 times over, and that's me mega understating it. I'm genuinely tired of people trying to fucking deflect on an actual issue and instead put it on something else. Because why actually fix the problems when you could instead blame it on something else what's more convenient? Not really helping is the fact that this kind of takes away from a lot of the actual people that are doing horrible things to real children. Because, oh boy, that's certainly not a heavy topic that is not heavily discussed enough already. You can dislike something and then agree that yes, it has a right to exist. I personally am not a fan of prostitution, but at the same time, if someone wants to risk getting an STD, that is their prerogative, not mine. If something is ultimately harmless and is not harming themselves or anything else, I don't see a problem with it. And after all, they're just fucking drawings. And you know, it doesn't help that you have certain governments trying to ban things like pornography. I cannot say the actual name because YouTube won't like that. It won't like that very much. Because the children can access it. Oh, maybe that's a problem with the parents not doing a good enough job. Besides, that's normal. That's been a thing for years. If it wasn't for the internet, people were jacking off to magazines. Magazines that were tame by comparison. Only difference now is it's easily accessible, eh? I don't know why I turned Canadian. I'm just trying to cope with the fact that I've been sick for a while and I'm getting sick of being sick. But it really does annoy me that people tend to assign a false causation to something that it does not equate to. The predators don't want the drawings, they want the real children, and banning the drawings of the fake children will not do anything. It will just make the problem worse as you encourage people to be more degenerate. Oh, it also doesn't help that a lot of times that the people doing this are linked to the Epstein files, and that may or may not be projection on their part. But that's just a theory, a logical theory that I can basically use my eyes and see that these people are disgusting. And that's ultimately what this whole thing is about. It's just about control so you don't see what the nasty stuff the actual people in charge are doing. They don't want your ID because they want to protect the children. No, that's just the excuse. Politicians and other authoritarian wannabes have been using that excuse for years. If it's not fighting the terrorists, it's saving the children. It frankly just kind of makes me mad that people just kind of fall into this nonsensical trap instead of actually thinking for themselves for 2 seconds. But overall, what's my solution to this whole damn thing? Well, simply put, give children their own spaces again. And parents just stop letting their kids go on Twitter and Instagram and other places like that. Actually, a matter of fact, even adults should stay off Twitter, Instagram, and all that. You might notice I've gotten slightly better assets. I'm planning on bringing better models, better Memo Vision, which is the TV over here, and other things in the future. So, stick around if you're interested. Or don't. I honestly don't blame you. I'm very inconsistent, and not helping is that life has hit me like a truck. So, anyways, I'll see you all next time. If there is a next time, I'm gonna do a video on The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth's DLC at some point. Have a nice day, because I certainly have not. Anyways, I'm gonna take a nap.